Today we're going to discuss the 2016 Mitsubishi Lancer. This is the non-turbo version. It's just the standard run-of-the-mill all-wheel drive monster. I'm standing outside in the snow yet again. Last night was -2 Fahrenheit. I think that's -30 or something Celsius. But regardless, I'm not standing outside with the Lancer. We're doing it all indoors. And when you look at the Lancer for the first time, you might be thinking, wow, that looks a little dated, doesn't it? Well, that's because this vehicle was being penned in 2005 and released as a 2007 model. So what we have here is a mid-2000s car with a 2016 badge, and it really shows. Now, the nice thing about it is it really doesn't look like every other car with the standard hexagonal grille and just the overall just modernness that new cars bring. The Lancer as a whole has one competitor. That's the Subaru Impreza. And with the age of this vehicle, you just got to wonder, either the person buying it's going to hate Subaru, or they just don't know what else to buy that's all-wheel drive in a car platform. Bro, you know, I'm making art here. When you get inside the Lancer, besides hearing a bunch of tones from all over the place, you realize there's a couple good things about this interior, and it's that level of simplicity that we had on cars from the 2000s era. There's just not a lot of fluff in here. The switches, the button layouts, they're just basic. You're not flooded with all the technology that comes in a modern car. Now, yes, you can tell how far cars have come in the past, essentially 10 years, in terms of overall interior quality and plastics, because this thing is so dated. But if you can get past that and enjoy the simplicity, if you're somebody who hates being inundated by blind spot monitoring, all the gadgets, the screens everywhere, this is back to basics. What do you see?
A typical generic car, but it has a drive shaft.
This is an all-wheel drive vehicle. And you can tell by the underneath of this that in Illinois, they use something very nice on the roads. And this is exactly, when you see a car like this, you understand immediately why all our cars are totally pieces of shit after 5-6 years. I mean, the amount of salt that is on
It hasn't even been that badly.
No,
right?
it hasn't. I mean, this wasn't even in snow yet. This was just driving around on roads that had nothing on it but salt. So we have the very basic here, strut-based front suspension. It's easy to service. There is, simple access panels here to get at stuff without having to tear apart the whole car.
Just take these couple out, throw it in the garbage.
Done.
Don't eat it.
But this protects the underbody from extra salt.
Oh, when you're going off-roading?
Yeah, when you're
When you're in
off-roading.
four-wheel lock?
When we get towards the middle, there's no aero panels under here. There's no attempts at smoothing out airflow, which makes things super easy to get at. Now there is one addition here. What is that?
Two-piece drive shaft.
Yes.
That if it's anything like most cars, when this bearing goes bad, you got to replace the whole drive shaft for $1,000.
Oh, what a deal.
Yeah, great idea.
Really great idea. But there is one really nice thing about this car that you forget about in modern cars. It's got hydraulic power steering. And after being in a ton of cars with electric power steering, no matter what they do, I can't believe how good the steering feel is in here from that.
Now just imagine if you went back to a CRX with manual steering.
Oh, that would be even more
like
amazing.
the Lotus.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Lotus.
Is that power steering? Or?
No, the Lotus.
That's
thing.
what I thought.
But that, that's a purpose-built car.
Well, right, but I mean, still the sensation you get in the steering wheel is like a CRX or a Civic.
Right. Well, you know what, though? I had a 98 Civic LX with no power steering, just a manual rack. It was the worst car ever. I would pray for the hydraulic power steering in that car, even though it was bad. It was impossible to maneuver.
Too bad you can't lock it into the two-wheel drive to the right two-wheel drive. That would be epic.
That would be epic. That would be as epic as Honda Pro Jason's description of the NSX commercial. That's about it for the underbody of the Lancer. What do you think overall? I ain't touching that thing.
How heavy it is.
It feels like it's a piece off the Titanic that you dug up.
What do I think about it?
Yeah, what do you think about the Lancer underneath?
It's very basic.
Really, you only have two options now, the Subaru and this. And this thing's so old. I mean, this would almost be a good car to find used, like 2007, 2008, if you have to have a car that's all-wheel drive and you get a manual, not a CVT. We're under the hood of the Mitsubishi Lancer. This is the 2.4 liter, and it's missing direct injection.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah, exactly. No, this motor is really strong. Now, it's kind of unfair because it really
I'm sorry.
No, it feels really strong.
Really strong in 4 cylinders does not go together.
I was going to say there is kind of some flaw there to it because it's been like 1 degree out. So, of course, it feels like ultra fast. I'm sure this would slow down quite a bit once it's 90 degrees out. But this is a motor that's been around forever. Again, this is also a shared platform. I think the Proton also has this motor and shares this platform. And then what was the other one, the Renault?
What the hell's a Proton?
Proton is the company that owns or owned Lotus, I thought. But, you know,
If they don't
Mitsubishi.
sell it here in America, I'm not worried about it.
You don't care about it? But this is simple. It's been around forever. There's no fancy new stuff piled in here. Really, you know, when you get behind the wheel of cars like this, of this vintage, there's a level of simplicity here. I don't feel distracted by anything. Everything is simply laid out. There's no buttons or knobs that you're just like, wow, I wonder what that does. But the other thing here is this is an all-wheel drive car, which is kind of a rare thing, or a more rare thing. But in the case of the Mitsubishi, it allows you to select 4-wheel drive lock, 2-wheel drive lock in the front, or auto, so it just kind of sends power to the back when you need it. So in this case, of course, the weather absolutely sucks as usual, but what better than to have a snowy day to test out the 4-wheel drive system? So right now I have traction control and stability control off and 4-wheel drive lock, and I just want to test out to see the difference between 2-wheel and 4-wheel drive. You know, its tendency is to, even in 4-wheel drive lock, in the slippery stuff, it wants to understeer. It wants to understeer all the time, and that's kind of the same behavior you're going to get in front-wheel drive mode or 2-wheel drive mode. Now let's see if I can get the car to throttle steer and get the rear end to follow the front and not have so much understeer. Yes, the answer is yes, and that's one really nice thing about this. Even with the CVT, you're able to get this car to rotate the rear end with throttle. Now, if you really want to get the rear end to move around a lot, to eliminate some of the understeer, you don't have manual control over this transmission. There's no paddles, there's no selectable fake gear shifts because, you know, you're dealing with a CVT, but you do have a low setting. So as soon as you drop this car into low, it's going to hold the power band near peak, so around 4,500 RPMs in most cases. So what that does is it brings the engine up to boil where all the horsepower and torque is, and then you can really throttle steer the hell out of this car, as you can see by this clip. Now we're going to leave the stability and traction control on, and we're going to mash down the gas and see how well it just gets off the line. Really well. Braking stability, again, is pretty good, except, you know, the tires on most of these cars are the weak point. We're going to put the all-wheel drive mode into auto and see how it handles acceleration with that. It's pretty damn good, and you can even feel, You can feel the power, cutting to the rear and back to the front, and you can feel the back end just moving around a little tiny bit as that traction grips in front and rear. So it just gives you a lot of confidence. The other thing is acceleration. We're going to put this in two-wheel drive mode, so it's only sending power to the front, so we don't have as much drivetrain loss. But when you take off, especially when you're on dry, this four-cylinder, because it's a 2.4 liter, it has plenty of power. And I know some of this is skewed because most of my acceleration tests have been, between 1 degree Fahrenheit and like today it's 16, so it feels really peppy. Now I'm sure you're going to lose some power in the higher elevation or when it's hot out, but you're really not going to complain about the power output from this four-cylinder. Let's see if we can get some better acceleration here with four-wheel drive lock on and traction control on. And you can hear that CVT, that's the typical behavior of a CVT, is to just hold revs at peak horsepower range, which works really well here. It pulls and pulls and pulls. And then you can feel the CVT kind of adjusting between 5,500 RPMs and about 6,200, and will bounce back and forth. Let's take a look at, and I say this gingerly, let's take a look at the handling characteristics, snowy pavement. Wants to understeer, of course, even in four-wheel drive mode. Yeah, it really wants to wash out. But once you get traction, you go in a straight line, but then you have to drive it kind of like a front-wheel drive car, and you just kind of worry about that front end losing grip. Now the thing is I can't really show you traction, right? And it's really tire limited again, but in the dry, when I was able to drive in the dry, I was really impressed with the overall grip of this car. And not only that, the suspension is really well dampened. I was extremely surprised at how controlled the body roll was and the real actual ride quality over choppy pavement. It does a better job than a lot of the modern cars, and I think it does a much better job than the current gen Subaru Impreza. It just feels really solid. You never have a jarring experience driving this car. And even it being that old says something for the actual chassis. It's just too bad they just kind of abandoned this thing and haven't updated it or just refreshed it or done anything to it.
Well, this isn't full of fluff like all the new cars are.
Well, true. So that's
you even buy the lowest of the lowest models, and they try to put those ghetto freaking screens in there like the truck had, where it's actually you can't even touch it.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, why bother?
Yeah.
At least this doesn't have that.
So that's a huge pro, is if you're more into the older style Japanese cars, you get that here. But in an ultra competitive car environment, Mitsubishi really has two choices. They go all in and try to innovate some new cars, or just pull out and be done with it. Because that's how I feel about the last two cars we've seen now.
If only they had Evos.
Yeah, they're done with the Evo. They probably don't want to deal with the costs involved with servicing and repairing and all that.